Hello, I'm Doug DeWitt, Transfer Paper Product Manager here at Condé Systems. In this video, we're going to explain a symptom that might be happening to you whenever you're doing t-shirt transfers to dark garments. It's a symptom that we refer to here at Condé as dye migration. Some of you may have experienced this issue whenever you're using a single sheet or self-weeding opaque material, in that your material tends to discolor while it's in the press. In this video, we're going to give you a more detailed explanation of exactly what takes place inside the heat press that causes this dye migration. Next, we're going to do some test files and test images onto different fabric materials to see if we can replicate the dye migration process. Afterwards, we'll give you some tips and tricks on how you can avoid this costly mistake. But first, let's go over to the computer so I can give you a more detailed explanation of exactly what happens during dye migration. Here's a slide presentation to explain what happens to your opaque material when it suffers from dye migration. In this diagram, you'll see we have a basic layout of a dark garment press application. On the bottom layer is our dark fabric. The culprit to dye migration is polyester content in the dark fabric. What we have to understand is that the white opaque material that we're using to print is also a polyester-based material. So we have like materials that are dyed differently. One dark, one white. Of course, we have our silicone sheet and our heat press, and we're using heat and pressure to apply the white opaque base to the dark poly fabric. What tends to happen is, under heat and pressure, the dyes will migrate from the black polyester fabric and move into the white opaque material, discoloring the material and the image resting on the surface of the material. This is the process that we refer to as dye migration. In order to combat dye migration from happening to our opaque materials, we're going to show you what dye migration looks like on the fabric and then move over to the heat press to give you some tips and techniques. Here's some examples of a few t-shirts I did in order to demonstrate what happens during dye migration. You will notice on this particular shirt here, we have two different types of color laser opaque materials transferred to this shirt. However, the white base of the opaque material remained white during the heating process, so no dye migration took place. The reason no dye migration took place on this particular shirt is because this shirt is 100% cotton, which is the best way to combat dye migration, to use a 100% cotton garment when you are using any opaque material transfer. As you will notice here, the white stays white. But now, let's move to this example of a t-shirt that has polyester content in the t-shirt. You can see from this example here, we had dye migration take place in this particular opaque material. What happens during dye migration is the black polyester dyes that are used to dye this garment basically got sucked into the white polyester opaque material as it was under the heat and pressure of the heat press. Instead of having a white material, we now have this dingy gray material. Instead of having the true color of the design, all the colors are now off because we have changed our background color. Yet, if we move down to this paper here, we will notice that even though this opaque material was put onto a shirt with polyester content, no dye migration took place with this particular material. This is why it's important to test materials that have polyester content for dye migration. We're going to move over to the heat press to show you a simple test that you can perform to test for dye migration in your fabric material. Now that we're here at the heat press, let me show you a simple test that you can perform on your opaque materials and your fabric materials that might have polyester content to see if dye migration will take place. Here are the items that you will need. The first thing you'll need to test is a shirt with some polyester content in the material, preferably a dark garment. Next, you will need some samples of opaque material to perform the test. Next, you'll need a silicone sheet in order to cover the opaque pieces inside of the heat press. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and take these opaque materials, carefully separate them from their backing sheets, and just position them anywhere on the shirt. To perform this test, you could just use just a plain blank piece of opaque material. But for demonstration purposes, I went ahead and labeled these materials with their names and instructions. Next, we'll cover the material with our silicone sheet or non-stick sheet, making sure that we completely cover the material so that this opaque material does not stick to our heat press. Here we go. Now, we'll swing our heat press over, lock it into position, and use the time, temperature, and pressure settings recommended for the opaque material. Make sure you consult with your opaque material for those instructions. When our timer goes off, we'll swing the heat press out, carefully remove our silicone sheet, and see the effects of dye migration. As you will notice from these three examples here, the material with the least amount of dye migration ended up being the Laser Imprints Opaque. However, this Neenah Jet Opaque for inkjets and our Condé Jet Imprints Opaque, also for inkjets, suffered greatly from dye migration of the polyester dyes bleeding from this dark material into this white opaque base. So in other words, if we had to decorate this particular garment, this material would be our material of choice. Now that we've showed you how to test for dye migration with your opaque materials and polyester content garments, let me show you some examples of some test results we did earlier today with our line of opaque materials testing for dye migration. First, here are two of our inkjet opaque materials that we supply, Neenah Jet Opaque 2 and Condé Jet Imprints Opaque. As you can see, on a 100% cotton garment, the images look beautiful. The white stays white, there is no dye migration. Like I said, it doesn't occur when you're using 100% cotton. On this shirt that has a high polyester content, you can see that while the image may still be acceptable, there was some dye migration that took place in this garment. So whenever you're using an inkjet opaque material on a material that has a high polyester content, you need to be careful. Make sure you perform our test. Here are some test results from our line of color laser opaque materials that we performed earlier today. On this shirt, which is 100% cotton, we transferred Neenah Laser 1 Opaque and our Condé Jet Imprints Opaque. And as you can see, on a 100% cotton garment, the images look just fine. However, when we applied the same materials onto a shirt that had a high polyester content, you can really see the dye migration in the Neenah product. As far as the Condé Laser Imprints Opaque, we see very little, if no, dye migration at all. Now, while we may have had a successful attempt with this particular opaque material on a shirt with a high polyester content, I would still advise that you do your own test to make sure that dye migration does not take place. The next set of tests that we'll show you here are test results from our self-weeding opaque materials, the Neenah Image Clip Concert T and the Neenah Image Clip Laser Dark. As you can see, when we applied the transfers to a 100% cotton garment, not only do we get a good solid white with the Image Clip Concert T, but we get a true red, blue, and green with the Laser Dark Image Clip because we went to 100% cotton. What we have to understand about the self-weeding papers are the white base that's applied to these self-weeding papers is a polyester base. So if you go onto a t-shirt that has a high polyester content, what you will notice is with the Concert T, it's not a true white like we were getting with a 100% cotton because we did have some dye migration here in the Concert T output. The dye migration is far worse when we're talking about the Image Clip Laser Dark. The reason is because with the Concert T, the white base is at the top. So we've got a toner layer separating it from the polyester. But when it comes to the laser dark product, the white base is right against your colored polyester material. And if that happens, odds are you're going to have a fair amount of dye migration and it's going to distort your image. Let's review what we've learned today in regard to opaque materials and dye migration. Dye migration will take place in opaque materials if you have a dark fabric material with a high polyester content. Under the heat and pressure of the heat press, the dyes from that dark fabric will migrate into the white opaque base, causing your opaque material to discolor and your image to distort. That's what we call dye migration. The best way to combat dye migration is to use a 100% cotton fabric, and you'll never have to worry about it. However, if you insist on using a cotton polyester blend, make sure that you perform our simple test of putting a blank swatch of opaque material onto your cotton polyester material and then applying it with your heat press to test to see if dye migration takes place. If no dye migration takes place, your shirt should be safe to use. If you have any questions regarding our opaque materials or need any additional information, don't hesitate to contact one of our account managers at 1-800-826-6332, or you can visit our website at www.condé.com and make sure you tune in to Condé TV for more tutorial videos. My name is Doug DeWitt, Product Manager here at Condé Systems. My time is up. Thank you for yours.